Huzzah! Welcome to Forged in Silence podcast. We have invited two ladies to join Robbie and I today to talk about masculinity. It's going to be a good time.
It is. I'm excited for this one. It's always good to get a different point of view from us men think one way, then women think a different way. And I think it's gonna be a fun one. Gonna learn some stuff.
Going to learn some stuff. I think all of us are going to learn some stuff. Uh,
Definitely.
we're going to let this conversation go wherever it pleases to go, but it's going to be a fun one because I'm really interested to hear on Amy's and Julie's take on what this means to them, what it looks like to them. And I think we don't often get the chance to have the experience of sitting down with the other sex and be like, hey, like, what is an expectation for you? What does this look like for you? And then, I mean, for us, we can say this is what it looks like for us. This is what we think it is. And there's gonna be stuff that doesn't align. Of course, we're different, right? But it's gonna be really neat to hear from the other side what it looks like, what it means. How do you navigate it? I'm sure we'll get into that too. But I mean, when it comes to men's mental health, talking about this sort of thing, I think is super important because, like, we men want women, women want men. It's like a thing.
Well, and how
But we
often
don't
do
know how to
guys come
communicate.
up and be like, hey, so what does masculinity look like to you? Like, we don't ever have the conversation. So I think this is brilliant.
We don't. I mean, Julie, you and I have been having conversation daily since like for 3.5 years now.
Right.
Um, and we still haven't even talked about this topic. This
Mm-mm.
one like we haven't even touched this one. So, I mean, the next episode, Robbie, we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to have an episode of us talking about what we think femininity is, and then have the other side on again to join us in our conversation about that topic.
Hmm.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Right? Like we can flip this one completely. I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, oh, and then I sent that to Julie, and she was like, "I want to know what you what your thoughts on this are."
It's so
So
weird because, like, I'm like, I know what femininity is. I know exactly what I need to be in order to feel like I am meeting all of the requirements of femininity and feel confident in that. And then I was like, shit, there's expectations on the other side of that that I never even thought about. And if you flip that, I'm sure it's exactly the same for men. Men are like, I know what it means to be masculine, and that's what I'm doing. And then women are like, oh no, no, you don't have that. Like, so I don't know. It's really interesting. I think it's a great conversation to have. So,
yeah,
yeah,
I think this is one we're gonna broach probably on a fairly regular basis because it's how we as men and women blend together,
for
right?
sure.
It's
I love it.
conflict. It's not conflict. It's
And the
whatever
other
it is.
thing, the other part too, is what society has put on each of us to think what we're supposed to be, or represent as man, or as a woman, uh, femininity or masculinity. What has society put on that? Because Steve and I have talked, and I don't always agree what society has put on masculinity, and I'm sure it's the same on the women's side. As a man, I know what I'm supposed to be and what is true to my heart. Does that align with all women? No, that's okay. But when we flip that, on the women's side, it's really hard to navigate, right? Because there's so much in the social media world of this is how a woman's supposed to act and supposed to look. Then when it gets bounced back to a man, we're like, fuck it, we don't care. Like, we are who we are. It's easier for a man and their friends to be who they are in a group than if you put that same group with a bunch of women, we're gonna, it could go good or it could go bad. but the men are going to hold together and be like, yeah, this is who we are. We don't give a shit. But the women might be like, whatever, right? There could be a bunch of different things. So it's interesting where society has put these two different groups right now.
And two, I think you
Well,
have
I'm
to
really
strip
glad
down.
y'all know
Oh,
what it.
sorry, go ahead.
I said I'm really glad that y'all know what femininity, Julie, you know what femininity looks like for you, and then y'all know what a masculine is supposed to look like for y'all. I do not. I have always walked in such strong masculine energy that I'm not always really comfortable with other women. And I feel like I've had to mask, like to put on a really feminine mask, you know what I mean? Um, so this is going to be interesting. I'm excited to hear what everybody thinks, and especially about like societal norms, because I think I walk a little bit different than a societal norm, and but that's nothing new in my life. So this is going to be interesting that way.
What were you going to say about stripping stuff down, Julie? Because whenever a man hears a woman say "strip down," we're interested.
No, like if there's
Yep.
Come on, I had to go there.
if there's one thing that I've learned in this whole like self-awareness, emotional intelligence process, it's that we have to completely strip down everything society has told us about any topic and take all of that away and figure out what we really believe about anything. And in this case, it's masculinity or femininity, but the society from both sides. So you've got for when it comes to feminism, you've got the feminist party who's like, you have to be this and that and whatever. And then you've got the super conservative side, which is what I was raised with, that is like women belong in the home and you need to cook meals and change diapers and that's your only purpose in life. And you get all of it from both sides constantly shouted at you. And that starts when you're tiny and you grow up and your whole subconscious forms this entire idea of what that's supposed to look like. And I think that's true for men and for women, who we're supposed to be, who the other sex is supposed to be. And the first thing you have to do is try to strip all of that away, which is easier said than done, and then form your own opinions and beliefs that are actually aligned with your values when it comes to what you're supposed to be, quote unquote, supposed to be like, what feels aligned for you and what you need from the other sex. And so I think it's hard to do, but I think it's also necessary if we're going to show up the way we need to show up.
I think it's also necessary if you're going to find a partner that matches what that
Mm.
looks like to you, right? Um, because there's going to be so many different versions of that, and it's going to look different for everyone. And and on the men's side of thing, you're going to have the alpha male, you're going to have these different versions of men, right? And if you know what version of what femininity, I think if you know what femininity looks like to you, and that's probably what it feels like to men too when we don't understand it, right? Uh, if you, right, if we don't know what that looks like, then it's going to be really hard to like figure out what your role is. Society says, I mean, we have the attack on the patriarchy right now. We have attack on a lot of things, masculinity based, I think, anyways. And so there's losing whatever this was that we think it's supposed to look like, and then it's redefining what it is supposed to look like. So I'm going to throw this out to you right here. What are your thoughts on masculinity from a woman's perspective? And either of you are willing to like, you can. But
Masculinity for me. I grew up in the South. So I grew up in a household where the male is centered, and it was expected that we were to take off his boots. Dinner was on the table by 6 p.m. This is something I've struggled with, like in all my relationships. So what I saw modeled in masculinity is definitely not something that I value today. Uh, Masculinity for me, if I take all that off, if I strip that down, will you? Um, if I could pick like ideal masculinity, it's calm. It leads without punishing or fear. Um, I've yet to follow a man in my life. I'm going to be completely honest. They followed me so far. Um, but it's kind of like you would look, and I'm an animal person. So if you looked at a dog pack, if you looked at the wolf pack, it wouldn't be the rash, impulsive one that they're following. It's the one that can pause and make decisions and support the others around them. So for me, masculinity ideally is a man that's not leading from a place of fear or punishment. Um, that actually allows me to be soft because that's when my femininity comes out. Because if you're coming at me with brute force, I'm going to match you there. Um, because one thing about women, we're supposed to look soft and do these things. Mess with our kid or loved one. We're not nice when it comes down to that, and we absolutely have that capability to meet you toe to toe. It might look a little different. So, in an ideal situation, if I could just paint that picture, it would be a man that is easy to follow, where it's not a threat. That allows me to take my guard down, consider things because I know that the best for us both are being considered moving forward.
So it's like a
So,
form of protection for you too.
oh, in somebody that I feel like could protect me alongside of me versus me having to protect everybody. Yeah. So protection, I never thought about that. But yeah.
I think protection is huge for me. That's actually one of, like, if I try to use words to define what masculinity looks like in a man, um, protection is huge. I want someone who is going to protect me, and I want someone who's going to make me feel safe. Um, and I guess that to speak to what Amy just said, to make me feel safe is obviously the opposite of leading by fear, right? I want to always feel safe. I also, one of the things, I think we're all coming from our own personal experiences. It would never occur to me to say, I want someone who doesn't lead by fear because I've never experienced that in my life. That's not who my dad was. That's not who my husband is. Um, and so it would never even occur to me to define it that way. It makes complete sense. And certainly that's important. For me, I'm like, I want someone who's going to show up in a way that's going to make me feel emotionally safe also. The only time in my life, in my personal experience with both my father and my husband, in not feeling safe is emotionally. Where I feel like, men are scared of emotions in general, it seems like. And I need, like, to me, one of the key identifying factors in what I see masculinity is someone who is emotionally intelligent, not someone who's falling apart emotionally, not someone who's, can't handle anything, their own or somebody else's, but someone who can handle emotions with strength and confidence and empathy and compassion, and all of those things. That to me is like a key thing that I think is missing in today's men. And I think it's an important piece of masculinity. But I want to feel safe. I want to feel protected. I want to feel loved. I want to feel respected. I want like a guy who can do the guy stuff. So to me, like, I still want a guy who can open the door or who will open the door for me. I still want a guy who can change a tire without getting mad about it. And like, so there's like, I want the guy stuff. I just also want the emotional intelligence with it. If I'm like talking about what ideal masculinity looks like to me, um, I still wanna do the girl stuff. I still wanna cook the dinners. I still wanna whatever. That stuff, that's a value that I hold deeply, but I want a guy who can show up in all of the ways that I need him. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of demands, obviously. In the perfect ideal world, that is, I guess, yeah.
One thing we talk about here a lot is, our fathers that shaped us into this masculine role we're supposed to play. That was, our leader, our mentor, our teacher. And if that person is already flawed, we're going to inherently pick that up. And Steve and I talked about this where, our fathers are emotionally flawed. They can't show emotion. So as we, grew up, we didn't know where our emotions played a role. then we had this thought of what masculinity is and all the other stuff. And when we strip it down, it looks a lot different now. You know, when I think of masculinity, I see like the lumberjack cutting down the tree, because that was always forged in my head. That was a strong, tough guy.
Tough guy.
That was it. Just tough guy, really. It had nothing to do with emotions and all that. So growing up as a kid, emotions were never attached there. They were never a thing of who I, was growing up. It was be this tough guy, this tough person. And a lot of men, number one, protection falls into that. So that's kind of inherently easy for us to, protect our family, our friends, whatever. But then when it goes into having the conversation and be able to listen and emotionally be there, I know I was lost. That was not something I ever learned from my father. I could have conversations with my mother, but looking back, it's like I could just see this big, huge blank spot in my life where I was never emotionally able to talk to men or women. I could talk to my mom. That was about it. Even with deep down friendships, I couldn't talk to another man about my emotions, right? Because that toughness was just lost. That that lumberjack just dropped his axe and was standing there and not doing anything. So it's really a slippery slope for me understanding all this and trying to navigate now with be able to understand my emotions. And with my daughter, it's like I don't want to be that tough lumberjack standing there on the stump, demanding her do all this stuff. And Julie, you just talked about that and I mean, you kind of talked about it too. It's like I can't be that person. I have to be able to show support and love, and be there emotionally. And as men, a lot of us are just lost because of what society is and taught us, and where we came from our fathers.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
I think I learned, like, I'm listening to you talk there, Robbie, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, holy shit, did I ever take things personally, and where did I learn that from? And I mean, try and have a conversation with my dad, and it gets very personal very fast. And then the axe becomes my self-defense. It doesn't become like I don't put it down now. I pick it up. And I think that happens in relationships with women too, where let's have a tough conversation. And if I show up in a vulnerable way and I feel attacked, which requires a woman to not take shit personally herself, so she can sit and listen to what I have to say and what's important to me, then I can put the axe down. And that's what she actually wants. She wants me to put the axe down. She wants, in certain instances, when she's capable, and I think this is the hard part, is when she's capable of actually sitting down and hearing what I have to say, because that's what's important to me. And you want, as a woman, you want the strong, you want the protector, you want the emotional intelligence. With that comes with emotional vulnerability. And I think this is this is where connection happens anyways. But if a woman can't sit there in what a guy's willing to give when she wants that. Right? There's a requirement for you to learn how to sit in my stuff with me. If you want that in return. Right? So you can get the leader. You can get the strongness. And when I show you that this is what's important to me and this is what hurts when it hurts, I'm not asking you to be my protector. I'm inviting you in to see where I'm sitting right now, because when I do, we both learn, and then I can go back out and be that thing, be the man that you're expecting me to be. but I can't sit there and continue to stuff it down. This is the societal norm crap where if you just stuff it down and you be stoic and you hold the axe and you be the tough guy and blah 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 blah, like I think you miss a major part in a relationship when you do that. That's the breakdown.
It also when here, this is my experience. I'm speaking from my experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is when you are with a partner who dismisses their own emotions, they dismiss yours. And oh, can y'all hear that? I'm sorry. My long guy's here.
It's all right.
So what happened in my experience was there would be small spurts of vulnerability from that person, but then they would also say, I'll get some real problems. And I'm like, we have real problems, you know? So it really depends. We talk about this modeling. And I grew up in the South. Like, I love to cook too, Julie. Um, but I didn't cook like 8 months after my divorce because I cooked every night, happy or not. And there were so many roles I was supposed to fill. And now I look back, and sometimes I think when we get in relationships, our men want to have, if they had a good, if their parents are still together, they kind of want that. So at some point, I felt myself trying to provide what his mother provided. I know that sounds so fucked up, but it's so true. I was a mother wife. So I know that he liked those things, that's what made him feel safe and secure, but it absolutely tore me down because I was abandoning myself to fit this profile that I don't feel. And cooking is a love language for me. Providing that kind of stuff is a love language for me. And my first husband, I would like make his plate, like I said, South. I would make his plate and he wouldn't eat. And I would take that so freaking personally. That was like my love language just being like off the table, right? But I think what we're finding right now, or at least in my experience, because that dating pool does not look awesome out there. I'm just going to let you know. I'm like, oh my God, this is not good. Um, Especially if we have done the work to become emotionally intelligent, to become self-aware. It's going to be hard to find a gentleman that can do that. It just is because um, one of the things when we lose our ego is that we recognize others' egos. And man, I'm telling you, it's going to be a challenge whenever I get to that point. But if y'all weren't taught that being vulnerable was okay from your fathers, which I wasn't either.
I
Vulnerability
wasn't.
was attacked in my house. And
Mhm.
then I wonder why I carry myself in a masculine space. Because, just thinking about this, my brain says if I'm vulnerable, even with a man, it's not safe. So as long as I can keep the control here, if I can walk when I want to walk, if I can change bank accounts, if I can do those things, so I think that has set me up and society has set me up for failure in unions because I think I was attracted to men that weren't aggressive, like my father, but that I didn't necessarily respect their softness. And I'm going to be just completely honest, and I realize that sounds so unfair, and it is.
I mean, no,
Um,
it's this is the truth, right?
yeah,
And I think a lot of men face that same truth in women,
Mhm.
which is why the dating pool to them looks like shit too.
yeah.
Mhm. No, I think to go back
What
to
a
your
world.
analogy of the lumberjack, right? Like, I think there's it's important for you to be able to show up with your axe in the world and do the work that you need to do and show up in the way you need to show up. And it's absolutely necessary when you get home at the end of the day to put the axe down. And that's when the relationship happens, right? There's got to be that place where you both soften, and where it's safe for both sides. And that's the piece that I think most relationships are missing is that it's got to be safer. Like Steve was saying, that is so important. And I think Brene Brown speaks to that too, where even when men do try to show up vulnerably, their women lose respect for them. And so
Uh,
so much of this is the women's responsibility too. It's not just the guy's responsibility to show up vulnerably, it's the women's responsibility to learn how to show up for that man. And we do a really bad job, I think, in general of that. You have a kitty cat.
Well, yeah, you you say that, and because Robbie and I started this thing and about men's mental health, and as we're still trying to figure out what we want this to look like, I'm following more podcasts and seeing more things on social media that that are giving me some insight into these sort of things that you're talking about. Amy, your cat is amazing. It's okay.
That
Like
was
it's
sweet.
literally okay. I love it. Uh, but when you talk about like a guy actually being vulnerable with his wife, his woman, his girlfriend, or whatever it is, and that loss of respect, like she's asking for it, and then at the same time she's losing the respect that for that man that she just asked for the softness from because she wants the softness, right? But it comes with the cost of the respect, which is a her problem, not a him problem.
But leaves him feeling unsafe.
That wrecks the relationship. So, and I've heard this of men actually being vulnerable with their spouse and whatever, and right after that, the relationship is fucked. It's gone. It's done. She got what she asked for, and then lost what she had. And then there's so many women after that were just bored with the plain Jane guy that they had to go out and have fun, and they're looking for the plain Jane guy that they had.
Mm.
It's the same. It's rinse, wash, repeat.
Yep.
It's not an exciting relationship all of the time when
Mm-mm.
the guy goes out and goes to work and you have all of these responsibilities and all of these things outside of you that the man does to feel like he provides because that's what he wants to do. He wants to feel like a provider. I do. I want to feel like I'm a provider, and when I don't, it makes I end up. I was going to say it makes me feel it. Yeah, it does. It makes me feel like I'm incapable, I'm incompetent, not good enough. Uh, and then that's going to be a direct reflection in how I act because I'm going to feel more insecure. And then the protection piece, and Julie says that for me, the protection piece shows up more in emotional intelligence than it does anywhere else. And that's for me. That's how this works for me. I don't need to walk around carrying an axe to prove my worth and to prove that I'm strong. I need to walk around with the axe in my pocket, and it needs to continue to be a threat, but never used. And I think it's the ability and capability of using that axe if it ever needs to get used, but having the strength to not use it.
I've thinking about that way you just put it, Steve. When we're young men, physical attraction is our number one thing,
Oh yeah.
right? So a
And
lot of
that's still
times,
high on the list.
yes, but it goes both ways, right?
Yep.
Depending on age. So we base our number one need, physical attraction. Then whatever comes with that, we deal with. We learn how to deal with that person, however. It's not always good because we're just lying to ourselves right from the beginning, because we're just attracted to the physical part. Then, I often think about this too, is like women always say that, just opinion, men are not, you're not romantic. I've heard that so many times. I'm like, I don't even know what romantic means, right? It's different to every woman, is different romantic. then I became sober, and I learned what romantic is in my own way by romanticizing having a beer at a brewery on a hot summer day on the deck or mowing the lawn, right? And I was like, oh, that's what romantic means. That's what it is. It's a thought. And if a woman can't give us that thought in a language that a man can understand, we're never going to be romantic. It's like we're putting that axe up right away, like, oh, you want this? No, I don't want this. I'm not giving you that. Because there's a lot of different things that go with it. But when men hear is romantic, I mean, what goes to my head is roses, cards, the rose petals to the bathtub. I don't know if all women want that. I don't know if that's even romantic to some women. It's a
As Amy shakes her head.
Julie
She's-
too.
like
but they're both like, fuck that.
yeah. So it just
Oh, and original.
yeah. So it's a weird thing that I know myself. I put up that wall and like I hear these words and I pull the axe out to protect myself before I'm protecting you because I don't understand the communication of what you're trying to tell me. But if you can verbalize that and we can have a discussion about it, it's going to suck. It's going to hurt. We get over it. And in a lot of my past relationships, we need to have that discussion and it just turned to resentment. And I can tell you, on all my relationships, I can sit there to the minute and turn the page and go, this was over. This relationship was over. Just due to resentment. You said something to me I didn't want to hear, and that was it. I no longer like you.
Yeah.
And it's so weird that I can do that. And just looking back at that now, it goes, well, we both weren't emotional available there for each other. We both had different wants and needs we could never talk about. And from the get of the relationship, it was about something else. It was never us sitting down and having a communication, having a talk and start to build a relationship off what we like about each other or we don't. There was always something there. And it goes back to my childhood of the societal norms of how men are supposed to choose their girlfriends. Physical attraction, the popular one, whatever. You could go down that whole thing. And Amy's, you're saying now, like that pull is a lot less. It's like, yeah, we sit here and go, shit, is there anything left for me? Like, I'm so good with myself now. Do I really want to put that energy into someone else? And this is something I say to myself every day. It's like, I put myself in a relationship and I'm like, I just don't want to deal with this person's shit.
Yes.
Like we have our own shit we have to deal with, and we're learning how to be really good at that now in our, with what we're doing. And it's like, do I have the energy to put in to someone else? And if it's not going to go right from the beginning, like you were saying, like that pool is so small and it's so scary. It's like, do I even want to give that energy?
I think as we get older, you're right. So when we're young, oh, he's hot, she's hot, blah, blah, blah. We were really into how you make me feel. Not that I actually like you or value you.
Yeah.
Completely honest, you make me feel pretty. You make me feel fun. You make me feel, and I can say that. Look, I know how to get divorced, y'all. Like I'm a pro now. My name has been Amy Jordan, Amy Boyd, Amy Jordan, Amy Tidwell, Amy Jordan. I'm like back to my maiden name. Once again, I had so much growth. Everybody, we have that one time in our life where it's time to grow. And it's like, bam, here it is. Here's your awakening. And so that was my last year. I got sober. I got divorced while I was sober. I was healing trauma. It was a thing. But I'm able to evaluate my relationships now from a healthy space, not an emotionally driven space. And it's not a tear the other person down. It's that we're all jacked up somewhere. And if I like you because you're cute and we go to dinner and I like your smile and I'm physically attracted to you, but the minute things get hard and you shut down and you go the other way, I'm done as this woman right now. Like, Steve and I have talked before about this, but women, we have to know what we want. But if we've been raised in such a way that everything is romanticized, the flowers, the whatever, and look, me and Julie were like, that's not it. And write me some poetry. Tell me what you're really feeling. That is way more connected and romantic to me than. But I've never been that person either. I don't really care for flowers that much. You know what I mean? I'm like, spend your money and we can go to dinner. I like food, right? Um, I mean, I'm honest. Let's go have a food experience. But I can look back and I was so codependent because that's what was modeled, and that is a Southern woman model. Is we are codependent on that provider, and that was not a safe place for me in my childhood. So I became the provider. I'm the provider. People latch to me. Um, and I never viewed it as latching. That's how I show love too. I'm able to provide. You know what I mean? So that's what I say. I'm kind of mixed up about what is feminine. Am I still feminine? I'm actually more feminine now than I have ever been, and I don't have a partner. It's because I'm not trying to pick up an axe and keep you from hurting me emotionally. So I'm just soft because I'm not going to hurt myself. And that's not true. Sometimes I hurt my own feelings. I've gotten good at that too. But we have to know. But I think that at some point in is this where we're all sitting in our early 40s? That what we're changing is changing biologically. Our motivators are different. I definitely don't want any more children. You know, uh, there's just I've matured to this point. But it's so easy to look at me in the past and go, well, she didn't know any better. She really didn't. I wasn't aware I was codependent. I wasn't aware I was an enabler. And now I'm like, duh, like you were literally groomed to be all of those things. And so dating now, if we pull forward to where we're at, and every one of us has also recovered from addiction and recovering from addiction. And if you don't have a growth mindset, that's not successful. If we cannot identify our feelings, name our feelings, in the Brene Brown part too, amazing. I've often joked she should have a dating website, and you can only get on this website if you've read that book and you can name your emotions.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Oh man.
But I can't. I can tell you now. I know what I want in a person, but I also have to be able to go. There's got to be leeway. We're not all going to grow the same. We have to hold that space. So y'all can lay your damn axe down and go, this really hurts my feelings and I'm so uncomfortable sharing this. We have a responsibility to show up for you guys too. And our protection looks different. It's nurturing, it's soft, and it's safe. And but we have to be able to meet ourselves there with ourselves first. And you're saying right, you hook up with the hot girl, blah blah blah. Dinner didn't go how she wanted, so now you're worthless. I mean, that's awful in itself. And dudes, y'all are kind of the same way. Oh, we go out, you think I'm hot, and then I use my brain, and you don't fucking like that anymore. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, oh yeah.
it has to be about where we're maturing at in our life. But I asked the other day, is like, so when y'all date, do y'all want to date people in recovery? And some lady goes, well, those are damaged goods. I'm like, I'm damaged goods, man. You know what I mean? But I've worked
But the
through
thing
it.
is, we're all fucking damaged
Yes,
good,
you don't have to be
right? Like,
have an addiction. I know plenty of people that are all jacked up and don't want to be different. That's a hard part too, as we're dating and navigating relationships, that some people don't want to change. It's uncomfortable, and that's okay too. That has to be okay, that we can kindly walk away. And it doesn't have to be nasty. No one has to be torn down. You're comfortable where you're at. I get it. I'm not. I don't want to ever stay comfortable again. So, yeah, but knowing what we need from the opposite sex, but knowing what we need for ourselves helps that if we're going to go into that relationship.
I think
Yeah,
Robbie, when you were
that was
talking,
my
and
TED
Amy
talk.
too, when you guys were talking about like, I'm good with me. Do I really want to put up with this person's shit? And I think if that's where you're at, the answer's got to be no, right? I think the answer, and I'm not in the dating world, so, take that with a grain of salt, but I think the answer has to be, do I want to grow with this person? Is this person going to grow with me? Because in the end, like
Uh-huh.
that's what a good relationship is two people growing together. If you're just putting up with someone else's bullshit, that's not a relationship. Um, the other thing I was thinking at some point through this is like that the ultimate display of courage to me is being able to walk into conflict without being afraid of it or without trying to
Uh,
avoid it. And that is in all of life, not just in relationships, but I think it's the most important in relationships. Um, and not just walk into conflict again with axe flailing, but with the axe down and both sides being able to show up courageously enough to hear the other person. Conflict is one of those things that most people avoid at all cost. Or if they are going to face a conflict, they come in on the full defensive with the inability to hear anything else. Um, and I think that's, I don't know, to me, again, you know, if we're defining what masculinity is, it's courage. There's a lot of courage involved in
uh-huh.
masculinity. And I think that the courage to walk into a conflict confidently and calmly is one of the most important pieces of masculinity.
The
I lose
courage to be
respect for
soft.
somebody. Yeah, I lose respect for somebody who cannot show up and walk into conflict or even start the conflict if that's what's necessary. Like stand up for yourself, right? Even if it's against me, even if I
Uh-huh.
did something that hurt you, come freaking tell me. Don't just cow down over in the corner and like, you know, let it be what it is. Like have the courage to stand up for yourself and let's do this. Let's talk about it. Let's find a resolution.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's another thing, though. I mean, if we, ugh, God, just society, this could go on and on and on. But we're taught as women to abandon ourselves for your needs, guys.
Mhm.
We need to look pretty, keep a nice home, cook, and that's what's called a good wife. Always in support. Uh, and I don't know if it's our age group or our parent. I have really older parents, like my dad's 86, so they had me in their 40s. But conflict was a one-way street. You shut the F up. I'm going to tell you how you're going to feel and what you're going to do. And if you don't do it, you're punished. So I'm not conflict adverse, actually, at all. But I tend, where I do lose respect for a man is if they are. If I have brought it up and I need to talk about it and it becomes, well, it's because of you. And, I'm done. I will shut down emotionally. Um, because conflict is freaking normal. It doesn't have to look like what my dad did. Um, but I can tell you, looking back in both of my marriages, my partners were conflict adverse. Conflict adverse. So I was talking to my son about his dad, and he's like, "Well, I said, me and your dad had one fight in all those years." But that's because I'm not conflict adverse, but I was trying to not make him uncomfortable. So we just had no hard conversations. Second thing with my second husband, we couldn't have a hard conversation.
You
So
dance around it, right? You
just ignore it.
just
I stay drunk
That right there.
to
You're
not
describing my
change.
marriage, right? No, zero. We've literally never had a fight in 17 years. We've never argued. Um, because we just both avoid conflict. I'll try to bring something up and then I get dismissed. So I'm like, okay, I'm wrong and whatever. I mean, we could talk about the problems in my marriage forever, but it's exactly that. Like show up willing to have conflict. That's what makes it like if a
Hmm.
relationship does not have conflict, that relationship is failing. Conflict equals a deeper connection and opportunity for growth. If you don't have those two things, deeper connection and opportunity for growth, you don't have a relationship. You have a business agreement.
Transactional, as Steve
Hmm.
has described it. Yes.
Yep.
And I don't want to live in a transaction anymore. I don't want to do that. I don't want that in a partner either.
the
I know it's not
transaction
always going to
needs to
be,
be emotional,
yes,
Hmm.
yes,
right?
because mine became financial and physical.
Yeah,
Right.
those are things.
Yep.
Uh, and things are nice. They keep shit comfortable, but they don't actually do the job. They
Uh-uh.
don't carry the weight. They're not load bearing. And so from a man's perspective, I'm thinking about this, and I saw something that Alex Hermosi said this morning actually, and him among some other people to me say some really amazing things, and they have some great thoughts. And this one here, he was talking about uh, the type of woman, and I mean he's married. His wife sounds great, but the type of woman that he wants, and it's the woman that's going to be in love with the two people that he is,
Uh,
right? First, it's the version of him that he is now, right? And the second one is the version of him that he wants to be.
Yep.
And for us, when it comes to being a man and what that looks like to us, we want your support in helping us reach our goals. And so, where I'm at in my life right now, I'm at a huge transition where I don't have anything. I really don't have a heck of a lot. I'm not I don't have stuff, but I have a dream in mind of who I want to be and what I want to become. And if you can't love me now, where I sit in not having anything, you're not going to love me when I do have stuff. You're not when I become that person. You're
Or
just
when things
not.
get hard.
Yeah. It's so I go ahead, Julie. You're itching to talk.
No,
Scratch it.
I think this is really important. And this is another maybe like, little defining piece of masculinity is I absolutely want to be in love with the future version, right? But
uh-huh.
like a piece of that is if you're going to talk about the thing you're working towards, you need to follow through also, right? So many people that I know, and again,
Consistency.
this goes men and women both talk about this goal and that goal and this dream and that dream, and it's all talk. It's I'm working towards this thing that, or I'm working to improve this, or I'm working to grow in this way, and you hear the words and you never see any action or behavior that supports those words, then I'm going to have a really hard time being in love with that future version of you. Right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's where I love that sentiment, that being in love with both versions. But I think we also have to have the integrity to say this is my goal and I'm going to follow through with it. And here's, show the action that this is what I'm working towards. Too often we
Well,
get
Alex
stuck
is the
in a
guy who
place.
can say that.
For sure,
Alex is the guy who can
absolutely.
say that because he definitely he's been through shit. He's followed through with and more, right? But I
Mhm.
mean, that's
No, it's
that's
just the integrity
also
piece. I think that's important, and
yeah,
I guess I'm
it's the
speaking
integrity
from
piece.
a place where I'm used to someone saying, "I'm working on this. I'm working on this." And so I sit there and I'm like, "Okay, they're still working on it. They're still working on it." And nothing actually changes or happens. There's no growth. And so in order for that to be true, there's got to be this is what I'm working towards. Also, this is what that looks like for me, and here's a step in that direction. So I guess that's it. Again, personal experience, right? We're all coming to this conversation with baggage. So
Oh yeah,
that's
for
what comes
sure.
up
I
for
mean,
me.
that used to be the person that I was, right? I would get nagged, and that's normally a nagging if it continues on too long, I think is a sign of just lack of respect. There's resentment there. There's things that go behind that, and you ladies can actually talk about that because I think that's probably important to talk about because I know y'all don't want to nag. It's not a thing that you want to do, but you do it. And normally, if it happens too often, it actually requires a conversation, not just more nagging. And then I don't know where I was going to go with this. I lost my train of thought, but because I think I got stuck on nagging. But
I got something here because
go for it.
past relationship too was past relationships can put it there.
Oh yeah, that's where I was. Yep, go for it.
They want us to be who they want us to be, right? And that might not be who we want to be. So then we're going down two different roads. And if there's personal growth that we see fit that we need to do doesn't align with what they want from us, there becomes a division there and resentment. And I know this from, past relationships. I'm going down this one road where I was doing all this for the family and myself, but the other person didn't want me to go this way because I was never home. I was never the person to be there providing whatever that emotional support, the family part, whatever it was. I don't know, because it was never spoken to. And what you were saying, that they got to be in love with the new me. That takes a whole lot of shit to get there, right? Because we don't know who that new me is. You have to be willing and comfortable in your relationship to go, this person wants to go here. I don't know what that looks like, but I have to be there to support them. And men or women, like, that's really hard.
It requires commitment.
It requires commitment, but then there's, we could put, well, what if they become this? What all the what ifs we play in our head, they may leave me because they become this or that. We can go both ways. Or they may outgrow me, and we get scared, right? We get scared and try to hold them back because the growth is whatever it could be, and we don't want it to be that. And it goes, both ways, like I was saying. And to find someone that's willing to be like, hey, you're willing to go this way, I'm going to support you. However, but there's got to be a lot of discussion, right? There's got to be a lot of communication in there. And we've talked about that, where a lot of it falls apart. But, speaking for myself, in relationship, support is number one. Support. Just be there to support me. And Amy, you were talking about, like, the motherly part, or the fatherly or the motherly, like being the father, whereas men look to their mother because they're always the supportive one most of the time. And it's like, just be like my mother. Just be there for me. Listen to me cry. Listen to my problems. Just be there to support me. Because we had our fathers that were assholes that did none of that, and we couldn't talk to them about anything. So we, went to our mothers for support. And if you're trying to, Amy, like you're like, I'm, more of the aggressive one, where the more masculine part of the relationship, men are like, whoa, I don't want that. I just want there to be support. And I don't know if there is like a defining way of knowing this going into a relationship. I think if there was, it'd be a totally different thing. But I'm speaking for myself. Like, when I look for a relationship, number one is support. Whatever my problem is, just be there to support me. Because Steve was talking about, we want to be providers. And we'll provide anything, but without support, we can't provide for ourselves.
So I go back, and I think you're muted, Amy. Yep. I go back and I go back to, I'm listening to you talk, and I think the example of relationships that I have in my life are very stagnant ones. And so, like, it's a rinse, wash, repeat, day in and day out. Conversations fairly empty, weather, blah blah blah, stuff like that. That's not something that I desire at the moment. Maybe one day it'll be that way. I don't think so. I feel like I require more than that. And by that I mean, Julie, you touched on this. That's a difficult conversation. Growth requires conflict. It's an absolute requirement, whether it's an inner conflict or an outer conflict with somebody else, with whatever it is. Here's my goals. They're going to change because of this, this, and this, and I need to communicate that. Part of what's lost in all of this shit is communication. We're fucking scared of conflict so much nowadays. This is societal too, right? It goes straight into here's conflict, cancel. You're canceled. Gone. See you. Done. Whatever. Go fuck yourself. You're bad. Right? It is. That's
Yep.
what today is. So as soon as you turn in something into conflict, even though it's a healthy conflict, you become this person that is looking for it somehow. Just somehow. Create a story in your freaking mind instead of actually asking or being curious.
Curious.
Seriously, there's a level of curiosity that is required.
Mhm.
It is required. Where is that coming from? I'm
Mhm.
curious about where that's coming from for you.
Mhm.
Take yourself out of it, for fuck's sakes. Stop being so goddamn selfish. Because it's a trade-off. It is literally a trade-off. That selfishness is holding up the fucking axe. It's what it is. If you could put it down for a freaking minute, take society out of it. Because what they think doesn't fucking matter anyway.
Nope.
It doesn't. I don't know why we're so worried about all of this stuff because I guess we're just shoved information. Whatever you do, wherever you go, you're swallowing something you don't need. Even by choice. And so it's a message. Everything is a message. And yeah, I'm getting wound up. I'm getting a little bit fired up because most of it's all bullshit.
Mhm.
And then we get caught up in it. And it's pointless. It's literally pointless caught up in it. What matters? We don't know what matters because you don't actually sit down and say, what the fuck matters to me, and write it down. You move the goddamn goalpost on yourself
Mhm.
because you're too afraid of, if I commit to this, then what's going to happen? People aren't going to like me, people blah, 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 blah. When as soon as you commit to that shit, the people that aren't going to like you are going to leave and the people that are going to show up. But we're too damn afraid of the loneliness that exists in the middle of it.
Yep.
Because it's fucking lonely. Even to just discover the parts about you that you need so you could share it with somebody else, and then it's important.
I think
There's
it's
so much
required too.
There's so much fear. The
Nope.
fear is like the breakdown here, right? The fear of making mistakes, fear of not being good enough, fear of failing your spouse, whether it's from the women's perspective or the men's perspective. There's got to be fucking willingness and courage to show up, fail, make mistakes, screw up, stand in it, be like, I just screwed up. I'm so sorry. Let's resolve this shit. Right? Like there's so much fear in all of it. We're afraid of ourselves, we're afraid of risk, we're afraid of everything. I think that we have to be able to communicate our own needs. We need to not be ashamed of our needs. We need to, and this goes both ways. It's not just the men that need to do that. It's not just the women, but there's so much fear. If anything, at the end of the day, the person that you're in a relationship with needs to be the person that you don't have any fear with. You don't have to be afraid of what you're going to say. You don't have to be afraid of making a mistake. You don't have to be afraid of hurting their feelings because you know at the end of the day, it's all going to be okay. Like that's the one space there needs to not be fear. But for most of us, the only relationships we've ever had still involve fear in one way or another. And that, like, your relationship should be the one place that you're not afraid to show up exactly as you need to show up and say what you need to say. Um, None of us have really experienced that, but I think that's necessary.
Yes, fear. Fear is such a basis for so much. I lived motivated by fear for most of my life up until last year. Um, Fear of disappointing others, fear of disappointing my husband, fear of disappointing myself. It goes that way, but I'm sitting here thinking, taking it backwards, like just what is masculinity? What is femininity? We have to have one another. That's where we bring that together and the good things of both are highlighted. And we see social media and we see these couples holding hands and looking so happy. You see an 80-year-old couple walking down the thing and he's holding her hand. Don't think that they did not struggle. Those people struggled and stuck it out. Guess what? He probably screwed around on her 3 times. Hell, it could have been her. They made a conscious decision to have conflict, to stay in it, and to work it. And I think it's much like my addiction. The minute we get uncomfortable, we leave. The minute I had experienced any discomfort, I drank. And there's so much fear in that discomfort. But when we push through that, we get this level of vulnerability with each other, that 80-year-old couple holding hands, that they know each other in and out, sickness and health. And I'm not real big on all that, but it's the truth. We're going to have times in our lives we're not okay. That's where that love and that version of that person's going to be. Um, and that one's pretty personal to me, because my ex-husband said, well, if you were the girl before your mom died, that's my life. I'm never going to be that girl again. So loving those versions and allowing space for each other in those spaces, that we're not always going to be shiny. We're not always going to be emotionally well. But I think we all run at the first instant of discomfort, or we shut down. We run emotionally. And that's the challenge in longevity in a partnership. If that's what you're seeking is longevity, we have to allow that space for each other, and we can't be truly a good feminine or a good masculine without that healthiness in between that requires discomfort and conflict, absolutely, and fear sometimes, and saying I'm scared. I feel like I'm going to lose you because you're changing on me really fast, and I'm not sure where I'm at yet. That's making me tear up right now. That's a scary conversation because it's an unknown.
Mm-hmm.
But you can commit.
That's a fear that I have.
Yeah.
I fear that in my growth, I'm going to lose the people I care about today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've expressed that
Hmm.
not too long ago. That's a real fear. I don't know what that looks like. That is a very, very unknown to me, especially now. Uh, I'm used to loss.
Me too.
I've said this before, and I mean, a lot of it was my own fault because I was never actually me, and because I'm walked around wearing masks, I was only showing part of who I was, and so the loss it felt like loss, but it was really just the version of me that I was showing people wasn't successful.
Hmm.
And being a chameleon is an empty place. It just is, because I'm never actually loved or liked for who I actually am, as opposed to I'm just liked for the mask that I'm deciding to wear that day. And so it's more of an instant gratification than a long-term thing. And that's what I'm used to. And I'm sure a lot of other people are used to this too. Or even worse, can't even put words to it yet.
Wow.
But now that I am where I am, and I'm pretty damn okay with myself today. Pretty damn okay with it. To a point where I'm willing to walk into the fire of conflict because I know I'm a be all right.
Uh-huh.
Every time I learn something about myself. And the fear is that the more knowledge that I gain, am I going to gain? Here's one. This is going to be fun. Am I going to gain enough knowledge that I realize that whatever relationship I'm in is actually shit? Right?
Mhm.
Everyone's laughing. But seriously, am I going to one day read a book and then go, "Oh god damn."
I
Because I
walk
was
around with a green paint can. I'm like, oh no, no, let's fix that.
right? I'm like, oh goddamn, and is that gonna be a pill I'm gonna have to swallow? Like that's hard. That is so much discomfort. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's scaring me right now.
You also have to be so freaking okay with yourself that that is okay, right? That's where none of us were ever taught that you have to be so okay and so secure in yourself that then you are willing to bring someone into your life that complements your life, not completes your life, right? Like if you're in a relationship where you believe that the other person in your life completes you, you're not in a good place and y'all both need to figure something out. Because that's not what it's supposed to be. And so, yeah, for sure, I think there's the reality that you might end up in a relationship and you might outgrow that relationship, and you've got to be okay with yourself enough that you can stand in that and be like, no matter what happens, I'm okay. Otherwise,
Oh, I
again, you're
plan on
operating out of
being.
fear.
Yeah, I literally plan on being a future badass version of myself. I really do. Like that is a personal goal of mine.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think the people that have known me for a little while can see that if you get in my way, it's going to be a problem. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I don't act out of malice.
Mhm.
I I do act out of a place of care. But for God's sakes, my heart is so much more solid and strong in who Steve is today that regardless of what you think about my masculinity, I'm okay. Regardless of what you think of uh, how I'm trying to get where I'm going to get, I'm still going to be okay. To the point where I'm still willing to listen to what you have to say and take that into consideration as a part of my path. And I think the invitation just needs to stay open to whatever possibilities exist.
Mhm.
I think the important word that has been a pretty important word in this last year and a half of my life is the word willingness.
Mm.
Because without that, I'm not willing to grow. I'm not willing to hurt. I'm not willing to be honest. I'm not willing to be sober. I'm not, man, if we can just have some willingness to understand one another, but it has to be from both sides, each side, man or woman, masculine or feminine. We have to be willing
Yeah.
to do it, to do the work together, you know?
I'm going to throw a curveball in here because I have this question written down and I'm very curious about your opinions. Because I have my own opinion on this one or my own idea about this one. And when I see it, I've got a thing where it drives me a little bit bonkers. So I'm going to bring it up. Uh, what do you think of women that say, I don't need a man?
Mm.
I have my own
I've-
thoughts on it. I'll share it after.
I've never thought about this before, but so the first thing that comes to mind for me is no woman should need a man. I think it goes back to being
Fair
completed
enough.
versus no man
Right.
should need a woman, right?
Mhm.
So I guess more power to her. But if it's the whole I don't need a man because she's acting like she has something to prove, then that's her loss.
That's that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So,
That's where I get it. You're not supposed to need anything. You're not supposed to need a man. You're not supposed to need a woman. Right? That's
well, you're not supposed to need anything, but no, if you're operating
I'm
from a
just
place of I have to prove my independence, I have to prove my strength, I have to prove my courage, I have to prove whatever, and so that's why you're like, I don't need a man, then you have a lot of shit you need to work out before you even really should have a man. Um, that's what comes to mind first.
Well, there's that whole
My first,
hashtag, I don't need a man.
yeah, my first impression is, baby, you're hurting.
Yeah.
Baby, you're hurting bad. Like she's got 15 axes, and she's got them all in a belt, and she'll get you from wherever you're coming from. It's what I see in that personally as another woman. It's a little sad to me, and not in what I'm talking about, that second situation where there's, when I have felt that way in the past, it's because my guard was all the way up and I didn't even know how to depend on myself because I wasn't vulnerable with myself. So that was where I could live in that space. I mean, I've never been like that really, but people are painful. People are painful. And I think that when I hear women like that and it's just like it becomes part of their personality, they're just hurt. There's something damaged there that they need to work through, most definitely. Do I need a man to survive? No. I need a man to procreate if I chose to do that. That's a requirement. At least some aspect of you, whether it's in a tube or in your person.
Right.
But beyond that, uh, it should be that a union should be a gift in that. You know what I mean? But I think we have the world is really hurt right now on both sides of everything.
Yeah.
And nobody is willing. There's that word. Nobody is willing to shut the fuck up, learn. But also, I just take that as a person who can't be vulnerable with themselves, and I know that from first experience that I didn't even know I was not vulnerable with myself. So I was
Yeah.
making all these connections that I thought were awesome, right? I mean, I loved you and all of this, and I'm like, no, you didn't. You really didn't, Amy. You wouldn't even admit to yourself that you were fearful. So that's just a steer clear, run, warning. That's what I got for you on that one.
Yeah, no, and the reason why I communicated it that way because that's the way it's communicated outwardly,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yep.
It's communicated outwardly. I don't need a man, right? So the walking around super independent woman that can take care of all of the things, chop wood, change tires, all of that stuff. I love a capable woman. Don't get me wrong, right? A capable woman is attractive to me, right? She can do shit. She can help me when I need help. She's a capable woman. That to me is impressive. It's not a requirement, but I think it's pretty badass. That's the strong side of her.
Mhm.
The soft side of her has got to be the equal and opposite. It's got to exist.
Mhm.
And so when I see that, I feel sad for that person because it feels like a loss of connection to me,
That's not letting somebody
right?
in.
Because
That's a
it
good point.
what that's what I get from it, and I wanted your guys' take on that because on the outside it does not look healthy.
Mhm.
From a man's perspective, when I see that, when I see, I'm going to bring it up on social media, and it exists. Congratulations on being fully capable. On the flip side of that, I feel like you're missing out on life. I feel like you're missing out on something that could be absolutely incredible in your life if you're willing to get out of your own fucking way. Anyways,
Uh-huh.
I'll shut up now.
Well, I think relationships are give and take. We get to share this together. Love, all the conflict, all the bad, all the good. We've lost like the gratefulness of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It is now one-sided. Um, whatever side, I don't need this person to do anything for me. Well, that's a lie because we all need the other sex to do something for us. And really, it's emotionally that we need that
Uh-huh.
love, nurture. That's what a man's usually looking for is that. Women, protection, safety, other things like that. Those are just few things, but there's a lot more to it. And if you're willing just to put up that wall and say, I don't need this, that's really scary where the future could lead if this keeps happening. And I know men are doing the same thing, right? I don't need a
Uh-huh.
woman. It's going both ways. And when you hear this come from a man, you hear all the the bad that a woman has done to him in his life. Sometimes we hear on the women's side, but child support, getting our kids taken away from us. There's a lot of that on the man side that doesn't get talked about when a divorce happens. You know, a man's financially responsible for till that kid's 18. He may never be able to get to see that kid again. All this other stuff that happens to a man. Yes, it does happen to women, but men now see that and like, why would I want to get myself into that? If I'm just going to get hurt in the end, I'm good enough at hurting myself, so I'll just continue to hurt myself. But when I see it on the women's side, it's a little different take. It's kind of like a whole shutting down type of thing where, Amy, you were saying there's a lot of hurt there. I don't know what that hurt is, and only they do. But if we keep dividing ourselves in this world, it's going to get, I mean, birth rates are already down in the US. I don't know the statistics of men between 18 to 30 or single that's really high. Men's testosterone's dropping like at a crazy level. Men are hanging out in their parents' basements playing video games because they just don't know how to deal with these issues that are rising, because we feel as men that women are just shutting us down because we're not 6 foot, we don't make six figures, all those things that society plays into that. And I often think back to when we had to write a letter to our friend and send it. We didn't get the news in the beginning for months, when it got taken across the country by horse, then got the post service a little faster. Now we can get shit within seconds on our phone. The rate we can take in information is crazy. And the way we take that information isn't always the most healthy way. And it's just getting really sad to see that, both sides of the wall, men are going after women, women are going after men. And like now we see the separation. It's where's it going? Where's the separation going?
I've said for a while now, ever since this whole, self-awareness journey started, like the meaning of life is connection with other humans, meaningful connection with other people. We can watch all of the social media experts tell us all of the things that we need to be emotionally intelligent. We can read all of the books. We can do all of the things. At the end of the day, none of us are going to benefit from any of that. What we really benefit from is conversations like this one, where we're sitting down having a real conversation and connecting with other humans, and that's how we learn, and that's how we apply everything we're learning. Like all of that information that is accessible at your fingertips 24/7, it means nothing. It's all in the connection. That's where like the meaning of life happens. And it's messy, and it's not presented all wrapped up in a perfect bow, edited and with a nice clear background B-roll video or whatever, but that's where the meaning of life is. That's where the good stuff is the connection.
And our societal hierarchy is so different than what it was intended to be for us. And I'm going to go, I play a game called I'm a Cave Woman. And when I get into a really sticky situation, I go, okay, as a cave woman, what would I need? We had small groups. We knew all the families of the people in our group. When we were seeking a mate, we were very familiar of who they were, how they were, and what they came from. So I take it back. When we're cave people, what's the need? And that is what drove our relationships from the beginning, is our need. And what was that need look like? The women weren't in the kitchen cooking all the time. They were traveling and foraging while y'all were out doing something different if you were a nomadic group. She didn't stop working because she was walking. She was harvesting what she needed along that thing. She keeps the hearth this way, that sort of thing. So I go back, we really have basic caveman needs, and connection is the biggest one. We can't survive without one another.
Yep.
I provide what you provide. I provide what I provide. You bring what to the table that you provide, and we all survive. So we're trying to live in this Cro-Magnon brain in a place that tells us all these things in an information download And then we're supposed to get in relationships, and then people over here are going, well, your attachment style is this, and well, this is that, and then, this is the wrong part, and this is not healthy. Do we know that? Or are we just going, okay, well, that sounds good. That's what healthy looks like. What does it mean when there's a storm coming and we have to go in the cave and we've got all this stuff, but we've made all these preparations and now we're connected and we're small and together? You know what I mean? So sometimes I'll have to play, I'm a caveman, and then it kind of shows me what matters, and not a lot does. That you're safe. So safety, love, warmth, connection, food, sex. We're good. Dry place to sleep. You know what I mean? I think we overcomplicate everything now, and myself included. That's why I have to play that game because I'm like, oh, I'm fearful, avoidant. That's what I learned today. But our brains are also made for learning. So we're seeking that information as it's coming through. We're wanting to learn and to catalog and to do those things we're supposed to. So, yeah, that's what I got on that. Sometimes we're just cave people.
I think
love
that's
that.
a fantastic way to just wrap this one up. I think it is.
Yeah.
So, Amy and Julie, thank you guys for coming on and being honest and having this conversation with us. I feel like this won't be the last time. This was really fun, and it was really great to hear both of your sides of what masculinity and what so much other things look like in a relationship. And before I end this, I still want to say to all the men out there that are feeling alone, that are feeling helpless, that society today kind of paints us in that picture, just the way things are. But there's a way out, and that's like for me and Robbie, it was both starting to talk about it and talking about those fears. We don't have to sit here in the loneliness of that silence in the stigma. So if you've made it this far into this episode and you feel that way, don't be afraid to reach out. Thank you guys.
Thank y'all.
Thank you for having us.